स्मराणि सोऽहं मो 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 शान्तं चिन्मयं मो मो त्वतस्थं केवलं मो 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 स्मराणि शुद्धं मो मो Okay. So we are going to Sutra 25, 25th Sutra, which reads प्रवृत्त्या लोकन्यासात् सूक्ष्म व्यवहित विप्रकृष्ट ज्ञानम. If we break it, then प्रवृत्ति आलोक न्यासात् सूक्ष्म व्यवहित विप्रकृष्ट ज्ञानम. So the meaning is, by applying the effulgent light of higher sense perception, that is Jyotishmati, knowledge of subtle objects or things obstructed from view or placed at a great distance can be acquired. So in Hindi, ज्योतिषमती प्रवृत्ति के आलोक का न्यास या प्रयोग करने से सूक्ष्म व्यवहित और विप्रकृष्ट वस्तुओं का ज्ञान होता है. So this is the siddhi, that when a yogi acquires this siddhi, then something which is very subtle, which cannot be perceived by the senses, that will be the subtle thing. Because when we talk about gross things are obviously perceivable. They can be perceived by the various senses. So the things which are subtle, they require greater effort, and it is difficult to really see them and perceive them. Priyam? 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 Your video is moving, so a lot of light is coming from there. Okay. So the subtle things are not easily perceivable. Even those subtle things which are not easily perceivable, they can also be perceived by the person who has this siddhi. So that is one aspect. The other is vyavahita. The word vyavahita represents something which is obstructed, which is not visible. So something which is obstructed from the view, even that can be seen by the yogi who has got this siddhi. So something which is not really possible to be seen because it is behind something, it is obstructed, the view is obstructed, then also it can be. And then viprakrishta is something which is at a great distance, something which is at far great distance, that also can be perceived by such a yogi. Now this is the siddhi they have talked about. Now it's a very simple siddhi, and that is the only explanation which is given in the commentary. But when we look at the aspect of how this siddhi might be working, what could be the phenomena which will be behind this particular siddhi, then we'll have to really go deeper into it. And when we go deeper into it, then what we come to know is that this sutra is connected to earlier sutra given in chapter 1. There are two sutras in chapter 1 which talked about this kind of pravritti, this kind of vritti, which are these sutras 135 and 136. So Vishayavati va Pravrti manasasti nibandhini and Vishka va Jyotishmati. These were the two two siddhis, or these were the two parikarmas which were talked about. I think there's a lot of disturbance. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. There's a lot of noise coming actually. Yeah, thanks, thanks. So how that described Vishoka Jyotishmati is described in those shlokas, those sutras. Now you see this 35 and 36, they are talking about parikarmas. Parikarmas are those techniques of yoga which are used for stabilizing the mind. Now, yogi, while he's working, he may face a little danger of losing his mind sometimes, falling prey to some temptations. All such possibilities are there, and his mind may get disturbed. So, at that time, what is to be adopted as a technique for such yogis? Now, a list of about 7, 8 techniques have been given in chapter 1, and these are known as parikarmas. They purify the mind, and the mind becomes stable and steady. That is what is suggested. So various techniques were there, like Maitri Karuna Mudita we discussed last time. So Maitri Karuna Mudita was mentioned in Sutra 33 of chapter 1. Sutra 34 talks about pranayam, prachardana vidharanabhyam, and then this pravrti. Now here the word pravrti which is there in the sutra, pravrti alok, pravritya alok, this is referring to that Vishayavati Pravrti. So pravrti means what? It is a kind of higher sensory perception. Normally we are used to certain kind of perceptions through our senses, and these perceptions are very limited in the nature. The limitation also comes from the ability of the senses as well as the object revealing itself in a certain limited way. So for example, when we talk about vision, we have seen that when we were discussing about invisibility, then we saw that the human vision is limited to a certain portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, and that limited tiny portion of electromagnetic spectrum is called light. So whatever falls within this spectrum, that only is visible to the human eye. So that is the limitation human eye has. So we can only see certain colors, we can only have certain visions. Same way, when we talk about the ears, there are certain limited sounds we can hear. So there is a certain fixed range of decibels. If the sound falls within that range, we will be able to hear, otherwise we will not be able to hear. So these kind of limitations are there on the senses. Now, word by word, if we go into the sutra, so pravritya alok. What is pravritya alok? Pravritti plus alok is jyotishmati. Now, let us understand what is this jyotishmati. We have to understand that when we talk about yoga, we are discussing Vibhuti path, and we are discussing about various kinds of siddhis. So these siddhis go hand in hand with yoga. Any sincere practitioner of yoga has to understand that the siddhis, sooner or later, the siddhis will come. Siddhis will arise, because yoga practices, they are always associated with the siddhis. This is important aspect. Just a moment. Still there is a lot of disturbance in the form of light. Priyam, can you hear me? Priyam? Okay. She has put it on. So any practitioners of yoga, he can rest assured that if he is sincerely practicing yoga, some kind of unusual powers are going to be there for him. That is 100% guarantee given by the yogis. And that is what Patanjali Yoga Sutra also tells us. So these siddhis, that's why this entire chapter is dealing with siddhis. And these siddhis have got a role to play. And what is that role? That they are like milestones. They are like telling us up to what level you have progressed, what else you have to do. So they are kind of indicators. And siddhis are to be seen in that light and not as something unusual, something which is desired for, something which we are seeking. Not from that perspective, but from the perspective of, how far we have traveled. So in parikarmas, very beautifully they have talked about the supersensory perceptions being developed by the practitioners of yoga. When a person is practicing all the angas of yoga, particularly the last dharana, dhyan, and samadhi, they can develop unusual capacities. So we have this capacity for knowledge of the subtle things, but normally that is restricted. So when that knowledge which is restricted, it becomes available to yogi, that can be said as the beginning of yoga. You see, so if you remember the discussion, we had discussion on 135 and 136 in great detail. Those who were present, they will recall it, or maybe they will remember that we talked about these super sensual sensations and experiences, and what is the role of these experiences, and what are these. So all related to five senses, but particularly they talk about four: the vayu, the agni, the jal, the shiti. So the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of touch, and vision. These particularly are talked about very often. So one can develop a supersensory perception, and he will be experiencing some divine kind of vision, or he may experience some divine kind of smell. These are the reported cases by most of the yoga practitioners. When they advance, they do share that they did experience this kind of unusual things, unusual perceptions. So when this kind of phenomena occur, then the faith of the yogi is developed and is strengthened. And according to many experts of yoga, the actual yoga becomes, it starts. A yogi becomes a real yogi when he starts getting these kind of experiences. So this kind of experience is the beginning of yoga. One can now surely say that he is now on the path of yoga. Rest of the people who do not have these kind of experiences, they are still struggling, they are still wanting to go ahead. But as soon as this something unusual happens, some unusual sensory perception takes place, then one is convinced that the yoga techniques work. Because what happens later on, many subtle things have been talked about. When we talk about dharana, dhyan, samadhi, and so many other things, when we talk about the tattvas, it is not easy to have this kind of faith where a person is able to put sustained effort in that direction. Such a simple thing, if we talk about now, if we are sincerely practicing every day, we are trying to regulate our food. We are not eating all stimulating things, or we are not eating wrong kind of food. We don't indulge in intoxicants. We are also not exciting our senses unnecessarily. So we are meditating every day. And then every day we are being very watchful of what we are saying, how we are reacting to other people. Now, all this requires tremendous effort. And when one is trying this, often it will be seen that, the doubts will come in the mind. Often the doubts will come that, am I on the right path? Some people may jokingly say, what yoga you are doing? Everybody is enjoying. The world is enjoying. Suppose you go to party and you say, I don't eat this because I'm practitioner of yoga, so I don't want to eat this. So people will make fun, you are not eating right things, you are not enjoying life. So these kind of statements from the other people, sometimes they do create my doubts in our mind. I have taken the path of yoga. Every day I'm closing myself in a room, doing my asanas, doing my meditation. I'm not enjoying like other people. I'm not earning like other people, or I'm not really, worldly. I don't have the worldly success like other people have. Now, these are the various kinds of doubts which will arise in the mind of sincere practitioner of yoga. So, how to strengthen the faith at that time? How to really sustain the effort which is going on? So, if something unusual like this happens, where Pravrti is a special ability of the mind to be able to understand more, to know more. When such a ability arises, then it happens that the faith is deepened. And again, the person, practitioner of yoga, can really move on that path more vigorously after having this kind of experience. That is the role we saw it, Sutra 135, 136, we are talking about. Now, you see, uh, what is this pravritya lok? Higher sense perception as would produce perception of supersensuous aspects of objects of senses. That was seen in 35. And also, supersensuous perceptions are four types: supersensual effulgence, touch, taste, and smell. Yogis possessing true knowledge of yoga reckon commencement of yoga to coincident with the development of any of these siddhis. Now, this is what is observations made by the commentators. And then now let us understand how this siddhi might be available to us, what must be happening actually. So we say that he develops power, but how the power is developed? Whether if they have the power, we also have power? Can we also have this kind of experience? That is the natural query comes into the mind. That is the natural doubt which comes into the mind. I, as a newcomer, I have started yoga recently. Can I also have this kind of experience? Can I have these kind of perceptions? So, to answer those doubts, one has to really think about these as to how this particular siddhi is working. Now, we have to understand one thing, that the mind's basic function is to know. Knowledge is the basic function of the mind. Where the mind is situated, we do not. The mind might be situated in the every cell of the body, and might be situated at a particular place. Like last time, Simon had asked about the heart and the mind. So now when we talk about mind, according to biology, every cell of our body has a mind. It has got certain intelligence. And when we look at the entire apparatus of our being, our body, we have certain capacities in the form of sense perceptions. We have got the capacity in the form of organs of action. And then the ruler of all this is the mind. The so-called entity of mind, we use that term very often. But there is this entity. But if we truly try to understand what is the nature of this mind, what is the characteristics of mind, if we ask that, explain what is mind, what will we say? I am aware of myself. That's why I am saying that I have got a mind. That will be the answer. I am aware. I know that I am knowing. I have a mind because I know I am talking to you. I am looking at you. I am understanding. So I have no doubt that I have got a mind. So the basic function of the mind is what? To know. So now in terms of when we talk about this capacity to know, we all the time we are knowing. Every time, there's not a moment in our life when we are not knowing. Remember this. Even when we are sleeping, we are knowing. The cognition part is going on. So from the yogic point of view, there are three basic functions of chitta, of our mind or our chitta. What are these three basic functions? Prakhya, Pravritti, Sthiti. Apart from this, there is nothing, no other function. These are the primary functions. What is the prakhya? Prakhya means knowing, perceiving, illumination, knowledge, knowing. That is what is prakhya. And what is pravritti? The conation, the willing, the desire, the action. So action parts comes from pravritti. And sthiti. whatever we have known, whatever we know, it doesn't matter how long it is, how many days, how many years, whatever we know, it is retained by the mind in some way or the other. In what kind of codes it is retained, we do not know. We don't have the explanations. What is it? It is retained in the form of sanskaras. So whatever we have perceived, it will be there, retained somewhere. It is a different matter that we are not able to retrieve it, but it is there. If the proper trigger is applied, then we can retrieve it also. It is like, computer. If those who know computer, they know that sometimes the computer can be wiped clean. All the memory can be, wiped. But even then, through the forensic methods, the data which was earlier available in the computer, that can be retrieved. So forensic science experts, they are using these methods to, retrieve the data from the computers. So our mind is much, 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 much bigger, more bigger and powerful computer. Whatever mind has seen, whatever mind has perceived, it will be retained in some form or the other. So that is the third function of the mind. But amongst these three, now these three, prakhya, pravritti, sthiti, knowledge, action, and retention, and memory. Knowledge, action, and memory. These are three basic functions belonging to three gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is responsible for knowledge, knowing. Sattva is everywhere. Sattva is in our body everywhere. Sattva is there in the external world. So when we are perceiving something, whatever we are perceiving. So again, so if we take this example, when I say, what is this? So you will say it is a pain. You have perceived it. So eyes have the capacity to see the object, and then signals are sent to the brain. Brain decide that it is an object which is known to me and it is called pain, and you will say it is a pen. So that is how the object will be perceived. But then we have to understand this object also has got sattva guna, through which it is revealing itself, through which it is available to our senses. If this form in which this pain is will not be available to us in the form of sense stimuli, continuously this object is sending stimuli to our eyes. And when the eyes are getting connected to this stimuli, then eyes can make the image of it and send it to the brain, and then it is decided that, okay, this is an object called pen. Now, this is the ability of the mind which comes from sattva. So the sattva part in every object through which object reveals itself, that is sattvic, that is related to prakhya, and the sattvic part of our mind, which is going out or reaching out to the object to perceive it, that is also sattvic. So sattva guna is predominant in mind. And technically speaking, sattva guna has got this ability that whatever will be placed near the sattva guna, that will be absorbed and that will be known. So our minds are not always in this sattva. Mind has the capacity to know. That's why I said all the time we are knowing, but how much we are knowing? Very limited we are knowing. Why limited? Although we have tremendous capacity for knowledge, but we are knowing very little. Why we are knowing very little is because the senses and the mind is as if being influenced by extraneous factors like the rajas and tamas. So suppose right now when I was talking to you, I talked about two kind of distractions. So when I was saying something and my mind got distracted, then I faltered. I did not speak very fluently. I stopped. And it was coming into my way of speaking fluently. So I had to request that kindly put it on mute so that I can focus. Now, this focus of the mind, this capacity of the mind is all the time affected by various such factors. And those factors might be coming maybe while sitting, some pain is there in the body, some sounds are there, or the heat is there, the temperature is high, or it is very cold. Various factors are there. And even the thought patterns which we have habitually, they are also affecting our ability to know. So many times unconsciously, because of the impressions, because of the tamasic impressions, because of the rajasic activity, our ability to know things is affected. That is a very, very important aspect we have to understand. Because according to Sankhya and Yoga, the mind or the chitta is, there is a technical word which is used, Vibhu. Vibhu means all pervading, all pervading. It can know everything. Our mind has the capacity to know everything, but that is restricted by several factors: rajas guna, tamas guna, our karmas, our attitudes, our thinkings, our belief system, our thought patterns, our desires, our distractions. All these are affecting our ability to know. Now, Vishoka Jyotishmati is that pravritti or that kind of attitude where all these factors are put at side and mind is able to focus single pointedly on the particular object. And then the Sattva Guna, which becomes predominant, it plays its role and all the knowledge which is there, it is available. Something to this effect has also been mentioned in the chapter 1 Sutra, where it is talking about samapatti. So before just talking about the samapatti, they say that the mind becomes, when the smriti is purified. You see, most of the distractions which we get are from the past memories. So that sutra begins with Smriti Parishuddho Swarupa Shunyavartha Matra Nirvasa Nirvitarka. So Smriti Parishuddho. This, when Smriti is purified, then what happens? The mind becomes very, very clear. It becomes like a crystal. Our everybody's mind is like a crystal, but that crystal has been covered with so many obstacles, and that is why the ability of the mind is affected. So, what this sutra is saying, that through Sanyama and applying this Vishay, now Vishayavati Pravrti has already been a person who is able to reach this Samadhi. For him, having some extraordinary sensory perception is not at all difficult. It is a very easy thing for him. In fact, he can often have these kind of experiences. So he has this ability. Now, once he has acquired this ability, then if he applies this ability and he tries to know something which is very subtle, he will come to know about it. Or something which is hidden, something which is obstructed, even that thing. Now, we have seen so many shows are going on TV, there where the demonstrations are there. They will ask you that take out a paper and write something on the paper. You write something and they'll say pocket it, put it in your pocket. And after some time, they will say what is written on that paper. And they will ask you to open that paper, and you'll be surprised. How did this person know? Now these is a very minor thing. What is demonstrated? Something deeper is here involved. Here, what deeper is involved that we have to understand. Now you see another thing which is doing rounds, another thing which is very popular. A few days back, I shared the first post news with you on the group. So if you get a chance to see it, there they are talked about the invisibility. Palki Sharma has talked about it. So earlier also in some programs, Palki Sharma had talked about these abilities, and something very unusual, is talked about. So as I was telling you that various shows are there in which these kind of demonstrations are there, and one can come to know about so many things. So from that perspective, here we have to understand that it is a deeper understanding of the self which is being talked about. I was telling you about these popular things which are being talked about. So now it is no longer very new, the secret. And then a few days back, Palki Sharma said that the most popular word which was searched in dictionary this year was manifest. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but then that is what she said. Now everybody, even the youngsters, are talking about manifest. So what is this manifest idea? You see, manifest means that if you have a deep desire in your mind to have something and you are really mentally prepared for it, and there are no doubts in your mind, and you are pretty sure that you are going to have it or you have it, then that thing will manifest in your life. That is the principle everybody is talking about nowadays. So Palki Sharma said that the manifest word was searched maximum times in dictionary because everybody is now interested in manifestation. So we want to manifest certain things in our life. Now, how does this manifestation become possible? How can it become possible unless we have that kind of power? We have that kind of power. That's why this kind of manifestation is possible. But are we sure of this? When we talk about it, we have lots of doubts. We have lots of doubts in our capacities. And when we have doubts in our capacities, things don't work. If we have faith and if we have certainty in mind, then things will work. So that is what this sutra is trying to tell us, that the mind has got unlimited capacity for knowledge. Don't restrict it. And if you restrict it, then obviously the senses have got the limitations. So the decibels will be limiting us. The vision or the spectrum will be limiting us. The sense of touch again will be very restricted. The taste, a tongue has got a limited certain capacity of taste. Divine taste is something. So they have talked about divine, divya gandha, divya sugandha, or divya drishti in 35. So these divine kind of things are possible because the capacities according to yoga are there, but we are not using them. So here they are only using it. So I'll read the little passage which I had written down while preparing the sutra, and then we will go in further details. Chitta has got three functions: prakhya, pravrti, and sthiti. Prakhya is sattva predominant and possesses unlimited capacity of knowledge, which is normally restricted by rajas and tamas. The sattva in buddhi is channeled through senses and know about the world. With yogic practices, the restriction of rajas tamas are removed. As a result, the sattva becomes pure and predominant. The sattva can now even work without the channel of senses. It can directly know the knowable, that is the gneya. When yogi applies this sattvic power, known as Jyotishmati, he can acquire knowledge of the subtle, obstructed, and even distant things. So now we come to senses. When such an unusual phenomena occurs, yogi is as if transcending the limitation imposed by the senses, or he may altogether stop using senses. He may directly reach the object through the mind. That is what is suggested. Because biologically also, if we speak, our senses are what? Our senses of extension of buddhi. Buddhi is the primary thing. Buddhi sattva is the primary thing. And from buddhi sattva, the ahankar comes, the manas comes, the gyanendriyas come, the karmendriyas come. So all these developments are from the buddhi. So buddhi is the source, which is the highest source and which is the most sattvic. So sometimes it may happen that the channels of the senses are too limited. At that time, the buddhi can directly take charge, and it is like, Dr. Jaydev gives the example of, he gives a beautiful example in administration. Like we used to have collectors in district collectors. He was the highest administrative authority in a district. So doctor says that the analogy he gives, a collector as a head of department can also take up the responsibility of lower officer. Same way, chitta, buddhi sattva is the master and the senses are the deputies or lower officers. But in certain situations, the buddhi can directly gain knowledge of the objects without the need of channel of senses. So the core of the entire mind is this buddhi sattva, and this buddhi sattva is only to be, understood. So we have this buddhi sattva. All of us have this buddhi sattva, and that has got tremendous capacity. But we fail to see that capacity, and that's why sometimes we lose sight of these capacities and we feel little belittled or maybe restricted. But once we have this idea very clearly, then we can understand. I'll give you another example also, but before that, I'll read. Senses are extension of buddhi, they are products of buddhi sattva. Senses are the channels created for specific function. Their capacities are limited and narrow. Pravritti Alok at the level of Buddhi Sattva is the unlimited power of illumination, which is known as Abad Prakash, or knowledge. Here the Aloka can overtake, surpass, or bypass the actions of the senses situated at the physical level in the form of ears, eyes, nose, tongue, and skin, tactile sense, and it can directly get connected to the object that are to be known and acquire knowledge. In this siddhi, the unlimited, all-pervading power of Buddhi's illuminating capacity, that is Vibhu Buddhi Sattva, as it comes from direct content with the sense objects. That is what is talked about. The knowledge is much higher and not restricted, like the knowledge of senses. So, this is what is talked about. If there are questions, before questions, I remembered one important thing. Few years back, I read one book. The title of the book was Supernature. The author was a great biologist, famous biologist, Lyell Watson. So you can just note down that Supernature, Lyell Watson. Now, he was a biologist, but he talked about things which were beyond biology. So, where the science stops, his work begins. So, in biology, we are talking about the body, for example. So, he talked about eyes. Body means we have got certain capacities. Five sense capacities, five organs of actions are there. So, at one point, he talks about eyes. And then he says that there are recorded cases where a person, he will sit in front of you at some distance, and you are holding a book in front of you like this. You are reading that book, or you are just looking at that book. Now, whatever you are focusing your eyes on, that he will read it to you. See, he is not seeing book. Book is with you. You are holding the book like this. He is sitting in front of you, and you are looking at the book. You are just looking at the book, and he reads what is in front of you. This is the recorded case, scientifically examined. So, a lot of research was done, and then this biologist, he says that actually what was happening, the person who was able to read this way had a very acute sense, acute power of vision. His eyes were so sharp that when we are holding the book like this, the reflection of the words which are there in the book, they will fall in our eyes. And he was able to read our from the images which were created in the eyes, and he was able to see what we were reading. Now, there was nothing unusual about it. It was the extraordinary capacity of the eyes, scientifically. And he has also talked about so many wonderful things. As I told you, various sense. He has talked about blind people. Now you'll find that blind people, because they are suffering from damage to the eyes, they develop very extraordinary senses of all other four kinds. So their sense of touch, their sense of sound, their sense of taste, their sense of smell, it becomes very, very acute and very sharp, much more sharper, much more greater than the ordinary individuals. So by way of compensating, maybe their mind is working, because ultimately all our senses are extension of mind only. And if the mind desires, if the mind has all the power, if the mind desires, it can create certain things. So mind creates that capacity in other senses where they can compensate for the loss of the vision, and they become very sharp and acute. So they aid to the individual to live life in a better way. That is the so many wonderful things he has talked about. And he has talked about a blind person who had some visionary sense in his fingers. So he will touch a book, his fingers will be moving on the words, and he will be able to make sense. I'm not saying this. Yoga Sutras are not saying this is being said by a biologist. That's why I gave you to the name, Lal Watson, Supernature. If you come across this book, please read it. It's a very interesting book. Very interesting book, where it is talking about extraordinary abilities people have demonstrated. So he said, like the mystics, mystics, they say that these are not the only two eyes we have. We can have eyes everywhere. That is what the mystics say. So we don't understand it because most of the time our minds are very restricted and we think in very narrow terms, we think in very narrow, limited way. So we normally don't understand, and mostly the approach is that what we don't understand doesn't exist for us, or what we don't see doesn't exist for us. That is our approach to life. But here, some things are really extraordinary they are talking about. And this Lyle Watson was there, and then uh, in various places of scriptures you will find some narrations are being given, some descriptions about some places are being given. Now, the descriptions later on, when certain capacities were developed, and people will like, the surface of the moon, for example. In a scripture, surface of moon has been described, but after reaching there, exactly what it is found to be telling with the description of the person who has stated it. So that person may not have physically gone there. It is not possible for him to go to that place physically. So various instances are there where scriptures talk about things, and later on, when science is progressing and science is able to verify, science is surprised that how the description given by the individual matches with the reality they are experiencing or the reality they have found. Now, these kind of possibilities are there. Very difficult to explain, but as I told you, we have got tremendous capacity. What is our take from this sutra is that we have ability to understand, even if it is subtle thing. Normally people say, nay, nay, I don't understand these finer things. You talk something big, talk about something gross, I will understand. But this philosophy, I don't understand. You talk about consciousness, you talk about God, I don't understand. But then we all have the capacity to understand everything. This is assured, but we don't use it. Many people say mathematics. I was one of them. For me, mathematics is the most difficult thing. But now, after studying yoga, I feel that if had I tried, definitely I would have understood mathematics well, or I would have tried sincerely. Then I had the capacity, but then I developed certain dislike towards it, certain hatred towards it. So I never approached it. But if we approach in correct manner, maybe, so this is just an example. Like that, we close our mind to certain phenomena, so that phenomena doesn't exist for us. Now here, this sutra is in a way telling us that believe in yourself. Your mind has tremendous capacity. You can know everything. You can do everything. It is not that somebody is talking extraordinary things and you are not capable of it. We all are capable of it. Only thing we have not tried. So maybe having this confidence in our own selves and in our own understanding, it is not necessary that we have to always depend on the other person's expert opinions. We can form our own opinion. We can find the truth. We can reach to certain conclusions. Each one of us has that capacity to come to conclusions, to find out the truth. That is the important part which this sutra is trying to tell us. That minds have this capacity, but we have to use it.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that we don't know the exact location of the mind. So it's not the brain. The brain is not the location of the mind.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Because when we say brain, brain is something which can be studied laboratory in laboratory. So, through the MRI, through the magnetic resonance imaging, and through the ECG, etc., lot of functioning of the brain can be proved and it can be tested, it can be verified, it can be seen in the laboratory. But mind cannot be seen. Very interesting fact I'll tell you that 130, 150 years back, psychology became science. Till that time, the psychology was a part of philosophy. So when it became science about 150 years back, a tremendous change took place in the discipline of psychology. So earlier they used to say psychology is the study of soul. But then the question came, where is soul? Nobody can say where the soul is situated. So then slowly the definition changed. And then they started saying psychology is the study of mind. But again the question came, where is mind? Mind is intangible. Mind cannot be touched. Mind cannot be verified. Mind cannot be seen. Where the mind? We use the mind. So we know, as I told you, I'm thinking, I'm talking. You asked me a question, I understood. So I have a mind. I'm using my mind to reply to you. But where it is, I cannot say. So the how do you study something which you cannot see? So psychology, if psychology wanted to be philosophy, it would have retained the definition, the psychology study is study of mind. But it was going into the field of science. In science, something has to be proved. So mind cannot be proved, so they changed the definition and they went to the definition of, now finally what is the definition? Psychology is the study of human behavior. Behavior is something which can be seen. So now psychology is a science. So they jokingly say the psychology first lost its soul, then it lost its mind. So after losing mind, psychology became science. That's why it is difficult to say where the mind is. And normally, last time you had asked about the conscious heart. Heart is normally considered to be the place of mind. So always when we are referring to the self, our hand goes to the heart region. And this is, heart is very important. Later on, Sutra 34 is there. We'll talk about Hridaya and mind. Some connection will be there. Again, we will come to this topic later on. Any more questions? So we leave it here. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste, Name-san.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.